The truth is that God is always recording. Zoom is just a secondary apparatus. So we are going to continue our study of Rebbe Nachman on strengthening and encouragement. Again, this is a chapter from Likutei Etzot. This is a whole book that's really great, organized by theme in categories on different of Rebbe Nachman's most important themes, and a lot of them are timeless. They're about, they're about things we all go through in our lives, and oh yeah, Nancy, I won't address your question. I'll let someone else write that in if they have.
Sorry.
No worries. Rebbe Nachman I don't know what he would say about your question, but strengthen yourself against having to do taxes.
Yeah, right.
But last time, what we did is we spent a lot of time talking about the tzaddik. We spent a lot of time talking about the concept of a holy person and how we can relate to a holy person in our day and age. And I thought we had a really interesting conversation. Took it to many different places. And we didn't talk as much about this other idea, which is how do we strengthen ourselves through all of the ups and downs of just regular life, but especially of spiritual life. Rebbe Nachman, he's talking to his followers, and so Likutei Etzot is a collection of different individual teachings that are from many different homilies, sermons that he gave, and teachings that he gave, and they're just brought together by Rebbe Natan as a collection. And I went through them for this one that we started last week, and I followed them pretty clearly towards the beginning. I jumped a whole bit when I thought that the theme was less relatable or too repetitive. But if you're ever interested, you can just Google Likutei Etzot on Safari, and you can come up with either this category, strengthening, itchazkut, or other categories. And again, it's the form of the verb chazak, right? We say chazak, and when we finish a book of the Torah, we say chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong, be strong. Let us strengthen, and actually, it's what in Ashkenazi Judaism, after someone's had an aliyah, what do we say? Yasher koach. In a lot of Mizrahi or Sephardic communities, they say chazak. Strong. That was a strong aliyah or a strong honor you did. And so there's a concept of strengthening is finding a kind of spiritual force in the world. So we're going to skip the first page since we already did that part. And again, we read, I want to reread the one of the tzaddik quickly because it also referred to the friends, and then we'll continue from there. So we'll go back actually to the first page and do number 3. Alan, if you don't mind rereading that one, number 3, and then we'll continue.
It is a good thing for friends who are attached to the tzaddikim to give encouragement to each other. The main source of strength they have to draw on is the tzaddik himself. His power is so great that he can draw up even the most damaged soul, even a soul that has not yet begun to emerge from the profane to the holy by a single hair's breadth. The thought that the tzaddik can renew such a soul should give everyone a feeling of encouragement. However low a person's level may be, and no matter what he may have been through, there is genuine hope for him, so long as he attaches himself to the tzaddik. A person should remind his friend about this in order to give him encouragement. He should also find other ways of encouraging him and strengthening his devotion to God. It is a good thing to pass on to his friends as much as the teachings of his teacher as he himself can understand.
So we spoke about the tzaddik last time, but a lot of it is also about friends, about having spiritual community and turning to each other for strengthening. But unless someone has anything to say about this one, we're going to move on to the next. Okay. If you don't mind, number 5.
When it is time for a person to advance from one level to the next, he must first experience a fall before he can rise up. The whole purpose of the fall is to prepare for the advance. Try to understand this, and you will realize the determination which is necessary in order to serve God. No matter how you may fall, you should never allow yourself to be discouraged. Remain firm and resolute, and pay no attention to the fall at all. In the end, the fall will be transformed into a great advance. That is its whole purpose. This applies to all the different ways one can fall. There is much that could be said on this subject, because everyone always thinks that his own situation is so bad that this idea does not apply in his case. People think it only applies to those on very high levels who are continually advancing from level to level. But you should realize that it holds true even for people on the lowest of levels, for God is good to all.
Can we talk about what a fall really is, or what it refers to, or
Well,
multiple things? I mean,
do you have any sense of what do you think it might be?
well, it could be some kind of embarrassment or public humiliation, but is it something that you have caused yourself, or something that just happens to you? I don't know that. I'm just
It's a good. I think it's referring to a sense of an inner fall, a sense of, not feeling good within. It could be something concrete that happened, like a public embarrassment, or a moral or ethical fall somehow. But I think more than anything, he's talking about a spiritual fall, maybe. And the spiritual fall is feeling, that you're not feeling, maybe you were feeling connected and open and in your best self, but that somehow then you experienced a fall from grace, so to speak, and suddenly you feel like you're not as connected.
Would Job be a good example?
Job, yeah. I mean, Job would certainly be like a fall, right? His whole life falls apart, but a lot of it is I mean, it's all caused by God in the story, right?
Well, that's, I guess,
I think causes an emotional fall, spiritual.
that I have is that, he's not saying who's causing the fall.
He's
But
not saying,
if
yeah,
you believe that, that God is basically
in it too, yeah.
there, for all of it, would it be a test, that God is making me go through?
Yeah. No, I think it's exactly that type of thing, right? Or the one of the traditions sayings is the chariots advance and then they retreat. Right? The chariots advance and they retreat. This is a big concept in Kabbalah, that we go forward and then we fall back. We go forward and we fall back. Nobody keeps going forward. And so that spiritual life is often described as, you're going, you feel like you're going ahead, and then there is what's experienced as a fall. And so
Could it be a depression, that if you were depressed after the loss or after a sickness, that you sort of fall back and then it's difficult to move forward.
Yeah, it could be, I think it can be a loss in one's life where number 5. We're talking, Jay, we're talking about this whole session is about strengthening against the ups and downs of spiritual life. And Rebbe Nachman is talking about what happens if you experience something that feels like a fall. And he's saying you're not discouraged, you just have to keep firm and resolute to keep going. That's the whole purpose is to meet your fall. And then if you meet your fall, then that fall is transformed into a great spiritual advance through the struggle, through the wrestling. I mean, we can see this in the lives, in the Torah, right? The story of Jacob wrestling with the angel is, I think, a perfect example of what he's talking here, and he experiences a fall. He's been built in a very concrete sense. He's been building up his family and going back home, and suddenly he has to confront his brother again. But it's a spiritual fall because suddenly it's all of his old doubts, his old worries, the fact that he stole his brother's blessing, all that stuff comes up, and he feels completely alone in that moment. But he's wrestling with the angel. And then that fall is transformed into him becoming a new person, right? Becoming Yisrael. And so, go ahead, Alan.
Well, I just wanted to ask, where he says remain firm and resolute and pay no attention to the fall at all.
Yeah.
Is he saying just ignore it? Don't learn from it, just continue on and ignore that it happened and don't try to understand why you did what you did or why whatever that's happened.
I think it's a good point. It's why I don't think he's referring necessarily to a physical fall, and it's more some kind of spiritual fall, because so even if you're experiencing, I mean, the way you could put this in spiritual terms, right? And this is one way of looking at it, is that, right, all of life is made up of different states of mind, right? And you're in one state of mind or in a different state of mind, and the part of spiritual life is trying to raise your state of mind. So you're perceiving the whole world from that higher, it's like different glasses that you're wearing. And you're trying to get more and more exalted glasses, which allow you to see the world with more breadth, to see yourself with more clarity, to see the world with more compassion and kindness. And all of the religious life is about that movement from state of mind to state of mind.
Like progress isn't linear, like
Yeah.
ebb and flow through success, ups and downs, and sometimes you're down in one area and up in another, and kind of just gradually over time get to the top.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the spiral, right? You're going down, you're going up, and it's both spiritual and like you feel like you were in your life, you were going ahead, whatever way it is. I think we've all had these experiences. We feel like we're going ahead, we're feeling more love in our family, we're feeling better in all of our life, and then suddenly we feel like it's not the case anymore. It's not, we feel stuck. Who hasn't gone through that before, right? So you suddenly feel stuck. And he's saying, don't be discouraged, that sense of the mind, that sense of feeling falling and everything is dry and hard is just something that's preparing you for an advance. I remember reading once a comment by a teacher who someone came to them and just said, I just feel like my whole life is just empty now. I used to feel everything was so good, and now everything feels so dry and pointless. I see no point in it whatsoever. And the teacher laughs at them and says, don't worry, this is just the waves of the mind. Your mind is about to go to a higher wave than it's ever been before, and it's just gathering steam. So it's that kind of idea that, and I think it's linked both to physical things in our lives and to inner emotional things in our lives, and to, right, all of our lives is mixed together, and so we go through things, and then it triggers all kinds of things in ourselves, and then we hope that by taking it all on, and both paying no attention, but at the same time paying complete attention to it, some of that where we're able to take it with us, and then some door will open that we can't even imagine, and that will take us to a high place. And And he's saying, don't think, if you're going through a hard time, you often think, okay, sure, this is, you're telling me that this will lead me to eventually something higher. I'm not really on that journey. This is just something completely objective that's happening to me. Like, don't. But he's saying, no, this applies to every single person. Every single person goes through difficult times and then has the opportunity to come back high, because it applies to everybody, for God is good to all.
I kind of feel like if you're in a position to realize that you're in the down state, fall state, maybe that's already half the battle of coming out of it.
Yeah. It's like if you can see it, then you're not just submerged in it. And we have a word you say, Jay?
It's like hitting rock bottom.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
And
a,
he seems,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this reminds me of a contemporary gospel song by Donnie McClurkin called We Fall Down. And it goes, we fall down, but we get up. We fall down, but we get up. For a saint is just a sinner who fell down and got up, who couldn't
Beautiful.
stay there and got up. And so the idea is to motivate the person who has fallen down for whatever reason, right? Spiritual, emotional, physical, whatever, and to give them the encouragement that God is with them and to get themselves up, right?
It's only temporary. Yeah.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Yeah. I
that's
think
a
it's exactly it. Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think it's actually a little bit more than that. I think that there's also an element of self-forgiveness, because when I was much younger, mistakes that I made, and not that they were great, but, somebody's feelings I hurt, or like my mother's or something like that, I might, it might weigh on me for a long period of time. And I eventually came to realize that you can't change the past, and everybody, no matter who they are, all human beings make mistakes. And that is how we grow as human beings, because as we realize our mistakes, to Alan's point, we learn from them. When you see it, you recognize it and you learn from it, and you say, oh, I'm not going to do that. And it changes you. And then, but once you realize that, you need to let that go, or else you carry this burden of mistakes with you. And I got to tell you, when I was younger, it was a burden until I realized, let it go and move on and be a better person and make better choices, because we are all defined. This is my basic belief. We are all defined by the choices we make over the course of our lifetime. We make better choices, we're better people. If we make worse choices, we're worse people. And so anyway, those are my 2 cents worth.
Very, very nice. Beautiful. I think it's definitely that sense of seeing it as part of life, right? And seeing that you keep on, you have to keep on going, with God beside. And a quote that came to my mind, I never thought I would ever bring up in a class. I just heard an echo, so maybe I should bring it up. But that Train Spotting movie, and they're talking, and one of them is talking about, what's your theory of life? And he says, well, you got it, and then you lose it. He says, is that it? It's like, yeah, and he was talking about artists and about, sense of being on the pulse and everything's, going in your life. So you got it, and then you lose it. But this is saying, you always adapt, you always find a new, start again. And there's that quote, there's that story from the one of the great rabbis of Eastern Europe of the early 20th century, whose name is just escaping me at this very moment. But in his town, they said that there was a wealthy man who was an incredible philanthropist and gave to everybody, and was just beloved, and ended up losing all of his money and ended up in complete poverty. And eventually people in the town came to see him and said, how could it be? He was such a good man. He used his money so well and it was so good. How could this happen to him? And it was the Chazon Ish. And the Chazon Ish said, well, he he learned how to serve God as a wealthy man, and he passed that class. And now he's gone on to the next class. He's learning how to serve God from where he is now. So we have different stages, where we have different challenges and different classes we go through. But even if it doesn't feel that way, what Rebbe Nachman is saying is that if you take yourself out of it, your ego out of it, God is good to all, and so you always have a chance of coming back up. Let's read the next one, unless anybody else has a comment on the teaching. Okay, Morris, number 6.
One may be at such a low level that one is literally inside the earth. But in order to serve God, one must start advancing from level to level. This applies to everyone in the world. Each time a person emerges from one level in order to rise up to the next, husks attack him again in the form of temptations, fantasies, strange thoughts, confusions, and all kinds of other obstacles. They range themselves against him and refuse to allow him to enter the gates of holiness. There are many sincere people who get very discouraged when they find themselves suddenly confronted by all these temptations and obstacles. They start thinking they must have fallen from their previous level because for some time now, they had not experienced all these temptations to the same degree. They were dormant, but they should understand that what they are experiencing is not a fall. The time has come for them to advance from one level to the next. This is the reason why these temptations and obstacles have reared their heads again. Whether this happens, or whenever this happens, it takes a lot of strength and courage not to lose hope and to master all the temptations and obstacles again.
So I think he's describing the spirit, the intensity of the spiritual life. And remember once here in the spiritual life being described as accelerated evolution. And I mean, Kabbalah believes, like other traditions, and multiple reincarnations in lives. And so you go through multiple reincarnations and you learn things. And so the way both Kabbalah and other traditions see it is that if you just go through your life and everything, then you're kind of on the slower pace. You evolve, you grow, and it takes a long time, but it's easier because you're not going through intense having to evolve. But that when you speed up the evolution, then you're having to deal with things in a much faster, more intense way, and they come up they come to the surface a lot more strongly, but then you're able to move forward in your growth, which is an incredible blessing. But it's like easier to take the long winding road up the mountain, or you start climbing on the rocks and going up, or go off the path. But then you might be walking through some brambles and get a little bit hairy at times until you find the path again. But he's saying, so he's speaking to his people who are experiencing what people say is part of this path, part of the path. And he's saying, he's describing what they're facing, and he's saying trying to give them encouragement, what you would go through. And I think on some level, because it's the same whether you're doing it on that very spiritual way, but also just in your own life, if you're going through a very difficult time where a lot of things are happening in your life, and you might feel like, wow, I haven't felt these thoughts and confusion in years. I thought I didn't have to deal with this anymore. This is something from my 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and I know I'm not that person anymore. But suddenly you're feeling, wow, I'm feeling all this inner angst again. And he's saying you're dealing with it at a whole other level. So don't be discouraged, like you've gone backwards and you're just having these troubles, but you're actually going forward. How does that make?
He's also, he mentioned something called the husks, which I guess we sort of passed over, but it sounds like these things called the husks have a life of their own. They have a certain center of action that they bring to bear against the seeker who is trying to climb the mountain, so that they push up against you in some way, and they do this purposefully. Is that what he means by that, the husks?
Well, he's drawing on the Kabbalistic idea that everything in the universe, in our universe, is made both of light and darkness, and sparks, right? When we talk about raising the sparks, which has become very popular in the last, decades, it comes from this idea that the world, God created the world, but the world didn't stand, and shattered, and then all the sparks of light got mixed into husks. And the husks are kind of like the physicality of the world, the part of the world that just drags us down. And I mean, the Kabbalistic ideal, the point of being a human being is we're trying to raise the sparks. We're going from place to place, trying to remove the outer physical layer and reveal the spiritual core and inner light within. And so how independent they are, and there are places where Kabbalah turns them into evil, like literally something that's trying to drag you down, but it's kind of just their nature to be, that's what they are. I'm not sure that they're good or evil, but you're trying to evolve and make everything push forward, and this is trying to, by inertia, keep everything back. But yeah, in Kabbalah, the husks have some degree of independence and of life of their own, kind of almost a sense of evil in the world, trying to keep people imprisoned. And but it's a husk, right? You try and open it up, and within there's light. And this is actually really the big innovation of one of the biggest things for the Hasidim was that they felt in everything, even in the thing that's feels the most lowly, you can find its opposite too and reveal. In the Gashmiut, in the most physical of things, you can find the most spiritual and elevated. And then by doing that, you're transforming the very fabric of the world. And so you can come to the worst sinner and then elevate them and help them find their goodness. Doing that, you're transforming the fabric of the very universe. So that's one of the reasons they were so into the downtrodden and the helping people and raising people up. And you see it to this day with Chabad, right? Chabad are trying to get people, just light your 2 Shabbos candles, right? And just do this. Just here, I'll come around with my sukkah mobile and put on a sukkah. And it's kind of the same general theology, which is if you just do one thing, you're affecting the whole universe. You're moving, and you have that potential. It's a very meaningful way to live, right? It's a powerful way to see all of life.
You're a man.
Say again?
If you're a man.
In their world, yeah, if you're a
Yes.
man. Well, women are part of the same thing too, in the general understanding of it. But they're, in the patriarchal society, I guess it just comes from men do it in a more public way, but women are definitely part of it too. But yes, in terms of mitzvot and all of that, the modern day Hasidim are pretty traditional. What's the word? Non-egalitarian. Okay, let's move forward. Unless somebody else has anything else they wanted to add, let's keep going. But so now he's going to kind of get it. Well, how do you? These things happen. How do you help yourself to get through it? Jay, if you don't mind, number 7.
In this situation, it helps to give charity to those who are worthy. When the recipient of the charity is himself worthy, the act of charity reveals the greatness of the Creator. This revelation helps the individual to break the husks confronting him on every level.
What do you make of that?
Who determined who's worthy?
I was thinking that.
I think what he'd be saying is someone who's not cheating you, or someone who's not someone who's really needy, for example, as opposed to someone who's a professional.
But then it's
Yeah.
not charity. It's not charity. I mean, if you are
Sure.
willingly extending a hand to somebody who you know is not worthy, that's not charity. That's a very different act. I'm just curious, who
I mean-
determines who is worthy? I mean, how do you know if they're lying to you or not? I mean,
So it's really, I agree. It's a very complicated thing. I'll tell you a story. I was once in Pico Roberts in the Jewish area of Los Angeles. And that was my landlord when I was in rabbinical school there. He was a hostage negotiator for the LAPD. And he was also a therapist and a landlord. And one day I was walking towards my apartment, and someone had stopped me, and he had seat, and he started telling me a sad story. You know, I came here, and you know, I'm a flower deliverer, and my car got locked or something like that, and I can't access the flowers. And he had this whole story, and if you could just give me $30 to help me call the person who can help me unlock the car, and there's my car, and Baruch Hashem this, Baruch Hashem that, and look at my tzitzit kind of thing, you know, and you know, to me, he seemed like, you know, I wasn't 100% sure, but I was like, okay, maybe I should help this person. And then he saw my landlord coming toward him, and he kind of disappeared. And so my landlord said, you know, I know this guy because he works with addicts at one of the local addiction centers. And he said, and I said to him exact question, like, how do you know who to give to? And he said, you'll know. He said, you'll really know. When someone asks you and it's completely genuine, you'll know and you'll give. And sometimes you give anyway. I mean, they're not saying not to give, but they're saying when there is a real transmission there. And the Baal Shem Tov says that, right? When you give charity, in a way, then open heart to open heart, it's like the letter Yud the coin is a letter Yud, the outstretched hand is a letter Hey, the receiving arm is a letter Vav, and the receiving hand is a letter Hey. You bring Yud Hey Vav Hey into the world. So a sense of, you know, something's opened up when you're giving charity. You know, I mean, for example, I very often give money to, this is just myself, since the migrants, kids who go around selling stuff, you know, and I often feel moved to give to them, and I feel like, okay, you know, there's been talk that there's gangs and stuff, but I hope some of it, you know, is helping children, and that makes me feel moved to give. But anyhow, what he's saying is that when there's a special channel that opens, when it's coming from that place, and that helps. And I think charity is also, maybe it's not just money, maybe it's also helping a person, doing an act of chesed. You know, when you help someone, and I think it helps when one's going through these hard times that they're talking about. Anybody else? Any other thoughts on this?
I have one question.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I don't even know how to say it, but I just say, like, in the Hebrew scriptures, I know that you should not drink blood, but can you donate blood?
Definitely. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an act of charity. Let's keep moving. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I was thinking about it, so I decided to do it last Thursday, because I was kind of thinking that would be good.
Good for you.
Yeah,
We should all be giving blood.
man, that's a great way of helping people.
Yeah, I find that a rewarding experience when I could do it to help other people.
Yeah.
And
Dude,
you
when
know
you
it's
look
going to
at
go
that
hopefully to
needle,
someone who deserves it.
Yep. Let's go to number 9. Would somebody like to read for us number 9? Go, Jay.
When a person succeeds in breaking through the barriers and rises from level to level, this also benefits his fellow Jew who was previously standing on the level he himself has now attained. For it means that the other Jew was obliged to rise to the next level, since it is impossible for two people to be on the same level at the same time. This is how one Jew can help to raise up another.
This is a really interesting idea, and I move it on to all of humanity. Maybe every religion has its own group, but this is an idea that Rebbe Nachman and others have, which is it's very esoteric, but that no two people are ever on the exact same level. And the way he imagines it is that he describes it that there's a sukkah on top of a sukkah on top of a sukkah going all the way up in infinity, all the way up. And each person embodies one sukkah. Each person is a world. Each person embodies one place up the rung. And so actually, what he's saying is when you go up, a sukkah is a booth. So when you go up to your own, you're pushing everybody else up as well. And all humanity, we're all on different levels. Nobody can be on the same two level. We're all like a place in some kind of massive board, so to speak. And when we go through, everything we go through our lives just to help us move the entirety forward.
It's so difficult because everybody at the same time.
Everybody has to have a fall because you can't advance until you have a fall. And then when you do advance, you're attacked by the husks, which are trying to hold you back and keep you from advancing. And what if you're not ready to advance, but somebody below you is ready to advance? I'm trying to integrate all of these ideas together. Into one, and it's not working.
Then they push you. Well, it's we want to make it concrete, but it's not exactly a concrete thing, right? We're talking about consciousness. We're talking about moving forward spiritually. I mean, so the way the Arizal, right, the Isaac Luria talks about it is that in consciousness, the way it works is, let's say we're in some state of mind, but then we try and reach to another level, a higher level of being and understanding. And it's like you make a link in consciousness with the new place. But once you've made the link, all it is just a link. And he describes it like meeting your loved one, right? At first it's just a kiss, and then it becomes an embrace, and then eventually you give birth, right? And then you embody that level, and you keep on going up and up and up and up, and everyone. And so it's happening in consciousness in these subtle ways, sometimes fast in our lives, sometimes slow, depending on where we are, what we're trying to do. But we're keep going forward. I mean, I don't think everybody.
I have another question.
Go for it.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. In the Jewish scriptures, do when you say bringing somebody to another level, do different Jewish people believe different things about the Jewish scriptures?
I mean, sure, that's for sure. People believe different things, and have many. We don't really have a set of beliefs, so there are a lot of beliefs around all of this. But I think that what Rebbe Nachman, what he's talking about is that everybody's on a certain spiritual level, and we keep trying, and we're all going forward. That's the journey that every one of us is on. And he's trying to let's keep on going. He's trying to give people encouragement because you're not in it alone. And I think what you were saying before, Nancy, if the person below you goes forward, that helps push you forward on some level too, even if you don't think so. And so we're all in it together, and we're all trying to move up together. And so anybody's movement helps everyone else. And we want to make it like a diagram, and we want to make it, fit like a board game, but it's not a board game, it's not a diagram, and it's happening in consciousness, and it's happening in ways we can kind of touch on, but not really fully understand. And he's both giving us encouragement, but also trying to give people some understanding to see their own lives in this way and to help them as they go through their struggles and their ups and downs. So let's keep on going. Jay, why don't you read verse 21 and 22? Sure.
The way to remain firm is by using the power of speech. Even if you fall, be resolute and speak words of truth, words of Torah and prayer and the awe of heaven. Talk to God, talk to your friends also, and especially your teacher. Speech has a great power to remind a person of God's presence and give him strength, even in situations which are very far removed from holiness. You should always be happy and serve God with joy. At times, you may fall from your level. If you do, you can give yourself encouragement by thinking about occasions in the past when you experienced a certain illumination. Use that experience as a source of inspiration now.
So we're going to keep on going because we're running out of time. So he's saying, use the words of your own speech. Speech is powerful. And so just, keep telling yourself, okay, keep on going. It's going to be okay. Speak words of truth, words of, Torah. Yeah. Say again?
Positive affirmation.
Yeah, positive affirmation, but bring the divine power into it, and just keep yourself joyful and don't allow yourself, your emotional state to go down. Just keep on going and saying, no complaints worth mentioning today.
Yeah.
Or
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
nothing that matters,
That's
right?
hard to do.
Just keep, and if you just feel like, oh, I'm just really, and you say, well, I remember I felt a certain amount of illumination and of well-being, and I felt it then, I'm going to feel it again, and keep on believing that, and use that as your inspiration, and keep serving with joy, and believe that whatever in your life it is that's a wall for you will eventually come down in this way.
And just even speech has a great power to remind person of God's presence, give them strength in situations. The last sentence on 21.
Yeah.
And that's why when you daven, even if you say the words quietly, it's different than reading silently. Saying them out loud is a little more impactful than to just a single person.
Yeah. There's a power to words, and especially the words of prayer, that they help change the state of mind, but they also is sending something out into the world.
Is that why when you go to, in particular, an Orthodox synagogue,
Yeah,
everybody's
out loud, you're
Out
supposed
loud.
to. Well, it says in the halakha, even the amida, which is a silent prayer, you're supposed to say loud enough so you can hear your own words, not so other people could distinguish them, but to hear your own words. And so you're sending a current of words out. I think it's multiple things.
I think there was a Talmudic argument about if you say a blessing out loud, if you say it to yourself, does it count or not? I feel like I read that.
In your own heart, yeah. There's a whole thing of if you say it in your own heart, are things that are said in your heart, are they actually things or not? Right. So it's like
Usually if you're alone, maybe too.
Yeah. I mean, there is a place for silent prayer too. And the Baal Shem Tov says, when you use the words, but there's a place where you take off. Your words stop, and then you're just completely in the silence and in this. But the words help you get there. Because keep on going, Jay, since you're there. 24.
The main source of strength is the heart. A person whose heart is steadfast will never be afraid of anyone or anything. He can achieve remarkable feats and win fierce battles simply through the strength of a heart which fears nothing and does not run from the battle lines. This applies literally to serving God. Understand this well. Keep on.
Sure.
All this climbing and falling and turbulence are a necessary preliminary to entering the gates of holiness. All the Sadiqim have endured all this.
So this is what Nancy was saying in that gospel song, right? What's a saint? A saint is someone who fell down and just got up, right? And this is so saying all those, and we read about this, right? As we were saying last time, Book of Genesis is a story of people who climb and fall and turbulence and trials and tribulation, and they endure it and they keep on coming. Let's finish with 33 and 34.
If you are so far from God that you feel that your every movement is a blemish in his eyes, understand that if a person has reached such a pitch of crass materialism, then every single gesture which he makes in the effort to extricate himself, even the merest motion he makes to move a fraction closer to God, is great and precious in God's eyes. It causes a movement of thousands upon thousands of miles in the highest worlds. In this world, man has to pass over a very narrow bridge. The main thing is not to be afraid at all.
So we come finally to that quote, which is, one of his, which is Rebbe Nachman's central quote, that be joyful always. And so we get a sense of what he means by the narrow bridge after reading all of this, which is that, life is serious business, and we shouldn't be afraid, and we should be joyful always. But you're doing something serious, which is going through all of this growth and climbing and falling, and that's the nature of the world. And better to do with open eyes than with closed eyes. And I think many of us go through periods where we go through it through closed eyes. There's a parable that the Baal Shem Tov used to tell of I don't have it perfectly in my mind, but two men were walking through a forest, and they get beat up. One of them's drunk and the other is not, and they get beat up by bandits along the way. And they come on the other side of the forest, and the one who wasn't drunk is just in such a state, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. We got beat up by these bandits, and they took this, and the drunk person's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And he's like, just look at yourself. Your clothes are torn. You look terrible. Don't you realize what happened? I think because they were drunk. And so it's terrible. It's like the world is often like that. The world is like a forest where we often get beat up. If you go through it with open eyes, and you know how to avoid next time where the bandits are. But if you go through it while you're drunk, then you're going to keep going through the forest and keep getting beaten up and only being half aware through the whole journey. And so he's saying the world is a very narrow bridge. So keep looking, keep strong. I love that number 24, all about the heart and the steadfast heart. And when you put your heart in it, nothing can stop you. And I love how he sticks number 32 almost at the end, right? Everything is part of it, right? This is all part of entering to the gates of joy and of well-being and of peace. And going through all of this will only lead you closer to it. And then Rebbe Nachman sticks his last preliminary teaching. He says, well, if you get to the worst place where it just feels like it's, the absolutely worst place, you're just, what is going on in my life? But even then, he says, even trying to extricate yourself by one movement is shifting the whole universe. It's like the force of your will is not just impacting you, but is impacting the cosmic unfolding, which is a really, really beautiful image, linking into, again, the Ari's view of life. And so I think we're going to end here a few minutes early because I have to go. And I want to say, I don't think he's saying this is always how it's going to be, right? Sometimes there are periods of joy, and there's periods of just everything is great, and there's periods where you just feel expanse and thing. But he's saying that when one goes through difficult periods, then find the meaning in it and keep on going, and your heart and your words and all these other things, and just hold on to the belief on the other side is going to be an unfolding. And it's a narrow bridge. One shouldn't be afraid through all of it. So thank you everybody for joining. And we'll either continue for Rebbe Nachman or do something else next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, everyone. Have a peaceful day.
Have a good week.
Bye.